Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Six Path Weeb, your guide through the hidden realms of anime lore and wild what-if universes. Today, we're diving deep into Naruko and the Legacy of the Three Eyes, Part 3, the saga continues, and trust me, it's about to get intense. Twists, powers, and secrets that could rewrite everything we thought we knew about the shinobi world. Quick disclaimer, this content is purely for entertainment and discussion purposes. I do not own any of the anime footage shown. All rights go to their original creators and copyright holders. Alright, no more stalling, let's dive in. Naruko strolled across the rooftops of the village the next day, the wind gently tousling her hair. She wasn't in the mood to explore much. After returning home from her previous outing, she had eaten a large bowl of ramen, her favorite comfort food. It helped a little, but the sense of emptiness still lingered. She made a mental note to avoid anyone with unusual eyes from now on. Later that night, a sudden rainstorm swept through the village. Naruko curled up beneath her bed, her tails wrapped tightly around her, shivering. Thunderstorms had always made her uneasy. At the orphanage, many of the children had felt the same way, but the caretakers would usually be there to soothe them. All except for her. Instead, she had often been left alone in the dark, while others found comfort. That memory still echoed in her mind. So, she stayed awake until the storm had passed, listening to each flash and rumble with wide eyes. By morning, Naruko had an idea. If she wanted to become a great shinobi, she needed more than just attention, she needed stealth. So, she dedicated the next few days to moving quietly through the village, practicing how to remain unnoticed. To her surprise, she discovered she was naturally gifted at avoiding detection, slipping behind cover and using the environment to her advantage. Her flexibility also helped her a lot. She could bend and squeeze through narrow passages and hide behind obstacles that most people wouldn't even think possible. When someone almost saw her, she darted between narrow walls to slip away. If someone chased her through the streets, she'd quickly scale a nearby wall and perch out of sight. It always made her smile how people never thought to look up. She turned it into a game. One morning, she made breakfast for herself, another skill she'd picked up quickly since the village guards couldn't watch her every second, and then stepped out onto her balcony. Across the street, an Onbu wearing a raccoon-patterned mask sat on a rooftop. She waved, and the Onbu returned the gesture. "All right, I see you up there. Now for the real challenge," she whispered to herself. The challenge was patience. Her plan was to quietly follow the masked shinobi once his shift ended. But for now, she had to wait. She tried sitting still in her room, appearing calm. When is he going to move?" she muttered, checking the clock. "It's only been 2 minutes?" She groaned, then began to leap around her apartment, scaling the walls, stretching, and trying to stay occupied. Every few moments she'd peek out the window to see if the Onbu had moved. Finally, the masked shinobi stood up and began leaping away over the rooftops. Without making a sound, Naruko followed. She darted after him, weaving across the rooftops, keeping her eyes locked on his movements. But suddenly, the Onbu stopped. He glanced around cautiously, and Naruko ducked low behind a chimney, holding her breath. She peeked out again. And he was gone. Wait, where did he? Before she could finish her sentence, she bumped into something behind her. She turned and found herself face to mask with the raccoon Onbu. "Can I help you, Naruko?" he asked, sounding slightly amused. I was just running. Not following you or anything," she stammered, nervously playing with her fingers. "That was fairly obvious," he said, kneeling so they were eye to eye. Naruko felt a strange sense of pressure under his gaze, even though she couldn't see his expression. Something about him made her want to tell the truth. Okay. I was following you," she blurted out. "Easy, Naruko. I'm not upset," he said with a chuckle. "Actually, I'm impressed. You did a good job keeping up." Naruko's eyes sparkled. "Really? Wow. Thanks, raccoon. I've got to learn how to track people if I want to become Hokage one day." "Hokage, huh? Well then, let me give the future leader of Konoha a helpful tip." Naruko stood at attention, her ears twitching eagerly. "You've got good reflexes and you move well. You've been using your eyes. But what about your nose?" "My nose?" "Exactly. You can follow people by scent. Here, try it. What do I smell like?" Naruko closed her eyes and sniffed the air carefully. It was subtle, but now that she focused, she picked up a scent, fresh air, like someone who spent a lot of time outdoors, blended with something faintly familiar. "I got it. You smell like Before she could say it, Raccoon gently placed a hand over her mouth. Shh, you don't want everyone knowing, right? A shinobi's scent can sometimes reveal clues about their skills. Naruko nodded quickly in understanding. He removed his hand. Now whisper it to me. Naruko leaned in and quietly whispered her answer into his ear. Raccoon nodded. Correct. Another comrade of mine once told me the same thing. You're learning fast. Now, I have to go, but keep practicing what we talked about. With a graceful leap, the Anbu vanished across the rooftops. Naruko beamed with pride. She hadn't exactly completed her challenge, but she had learned something new and valuable. Since the day was still young, she replayed the conversation in her head. She closed her eyes again and tried to identify the different scents she'd encountered while running through the village. She was surprised by how many she remembered without even realizing it. Now, she just needed someone else to follow. She peered over the edge of the rooftop. The streets below were filled with people, but they moved slowly, not quite the challenge she was looking for. She frowned slightly, tails fluttering behind her in the breeze. Guess I'll have to try again another day, she sighed. Then, with a grin, she took off running again, just for fun. She climbed a nearby pole, balanced at the top for a moment, then leapt into the air like a bird in flight. She landed on another post, slid down gracefully, and dashed off across the village. She felt light and free, as though nothing could hold her back. But just as she reached the top of another building, a hand gently caught her arm. Startled, she looked up to see a purple-haired Anbu with a katana at her side. Miss Naruko Uzumaki, the Anbu said kindly. The Hokage requests your presence at the Ninja Academy. She pointed toward the other side of the village. And if you get there right away, you'll be treated to a ramen lunch. Naruko's eyes lit up. Really? Ramen? I'm on my way. With that, she dashed off, her spirit high and her heart full of energy, ready for whatever came next. Sarutobi waited patiently outside the academy gates, his eyes scanning the street for a certain enthusiastic young girl. Suddenly, a loud voice called out, "Old man." He looked forward expectantly, waiting for Naruko to come dashing down the road toward him. When no one appeared, his brows furrowed. Then, as if prompted by instinct, he looked up, just in time to be caught by a whirlwind of energy in the form of a small girl with bright eyes and 9 swishing tails. The force knocked him backward with a surprised grunt. Easy now, Naruko. I'm not as spry as I once was, he said with a chuckle, gently disentangling the girl from his robes. As he dusted himself off, he looked around and noticed she had arrived alone. Curiously, he asked, Naruko, how did you get here so fast? And what happened to the escort I assigned? At that moment, the Anbu guard stumbled into view, clearly winded. Her falcon mask was cracked, and her uniform looked like it had seen a few too many scrapes. Sweat dripped down her face, and her breathing was uneven. She clutched her chest and asked between breaths, Hokage-sama. Permission to speak freely? Sarutobi nodded. With all due respect. Next time, please don't motivate her with ramen. I stopped trying to keep up after she leapt from the 12th rooftop as a shortcut. She gave a small bow and limped away to recover. Sarutobi chuckled fondly. She outran a trained Anbu all for a bowl of ramen. Yes, enrolling her here is definitely the right choice. She'll learn to focus her talents properly. He turned to Naruko, smiling. Now then, this is the Shinobi Academy. Here, you'll be trained in many ninja arts, what you like to call awesome skills. You mean like that lightning speed move? Can I learn that first, old man? Naruko asked, eyes sparkling. In time, Naruko. You'll get to learn many abilities, speed, stealth, strategy, and more. Every true ninja is well-rounded. Naruko's ears drooped slightly. Aw, but that sounds kinda slow. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow. Oh really? Have you ever heard the stories of the 4th Hokage? Yeah. Well, all those adventures are written down. If you take the time to read a book or a scroll, you'll discover plenty of exciting secrets. Naruko immediately brightened. Okay, I'll do that. With that, they entered the academy grounds. The main building stood tall, surrounded by open training fields, tracks, and sparring areas. Naruko, who had spent many months hopping from rooftop to rooftop, felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. Perhaps here she could show everyone what she was truly capable of. Even if climbing a rope wasn't quite as thrilling as scaling the Hokage Tower. As she followed Sarutobi through the halls, the children around her paused to stare. She felt a wave of eyes on her, making her shoulders stiffen. Eventually, they stopped at a classroom door. Sarutobi opened it and gestured for Naruko to follow. The moment the Hokage stepped inside, the room fell silent and everyone stood. The instructor, a young man with a gentle but serious face, bowed respectfully. "Iruka, I trust class hasn't started yet?" "No, sir," Iruka replied. "I just began roll call." His eyes fell on the small girl with fox-like features behind the Hokage. His expression shifted slightly, though he quickly masked it. "Is that?" "Yes," Sarutobi said warmly. "This is your new student. Naruko Uzumaki. Naruko, this is Iruka Umino. He'll be your teacher from now on." Naruko stepped forward shyly. "Hi, sir, I mean, Iruka-sensei." She corrected quickly. The class murmured in surprise. "Whoa, who's that? She has tails. Like a fox. Kawaii. Look at those ears. I want to touch them. Does she have fangs? Whoa. She kinda smells like the woods. Wait, Akamaru's acting funny. She's different." At Sarutobi's subtle nod, Naruko turned to the class. Though nervous under so many stares, she took a deep breath and beamed. "Hi everyone. I'm Naruko Uzumaki, and I'm going to be the world's greatest ninja someday." Sarutobi sighed quietly but smiled all the same. So begins her journey. Dash. Meanwhile, Iruka sat quietly, thoughts racing. Just a few days ago, the Hokage had met with him in person and explained that Naruko Uzumaki, Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, would be joining his class. The revelation had shaken him. The Nine Tails. The creature responsible for so much destruction in the past. It lived within this cheerful girl. He had grown up with great loss, learning to be strong on his own. At first, his thoughts had turned dark with resentment, struggling with the idea of teaching her. But then he remembered his oath. As a shinobi, he was taught to look beneath the surface. As a teacher, it was his duty to guide all children equally, without judgment. And as a citizen, he had to trust in the wisdom of his leader. So, despite his initial fears, he had said nothing. Deep down, he now realized. Maybe, just maybe, there was something about Naruko that deserved a chance. "I'll observe her, fairly," he thought. "Like every student here. Maybe this is why the Hokage chose me for this task." Dash. Iruka gently guided Naruko to a seat in the middle row. She made her way up the stairs and sat beside a boy with pineapple-shaped hair who was dozing on his desk. She glanced around, taking everything in. The sights, the sounds, the scents, it was all overwhelming. Still, her senses caught a few things. A boy with spiky hair was whispering to a tiny puppy named Akamaru. Across the row, a quiet girl with lavender eyes met her gaze, and both looked away shyly at the same time. Her eyes. So intense, Naruko thought, turning red. She looked at me. Could we be friends? The girl wondered, twiddling her fingers nervously. Naruko sniffed the air. Something smelled earthy. Bugs? She turned and spotted a boy in dark glasses and a high-collared coat quietly watching her. Their eyes locked for a moment, though his expression gave away nothing. After a few seconds, Naruko shrugged and turned back toward the front. Shikamaru, the sleepy boy beside her, cracked one eye open. Though he found most things tiresome, something about this new student intrigued him. She was like a puzzle missing one key piece. Shino, the boy with the glasses, noticed his insects were unusually active. They only behaved this way around powerful chakra sources. When Naruko looked his way, he found himself holding his breath, not out of fear, but curiosity. Though usually quiet and reserved due to others finding his abilities strange, Shino felt a glimmer of potential. Perhaps, in Naruko, he'd found someone who could become a true comrade. Naruko sat quietly in her seat, lost in thought. The Hokage had reminded her earlier about the importance of staying aware of her surroundings and listening carefully. After he left, Iruka-sensei began his lecture, something about the origins of the Fire Nation. At first, Naruko leaned forward with interest, hoping for something exciting, but as the lesson carried on, her attention began to drift. Was this what the whole day would be like? She longed to be outdoors, moving around freely. Her fluffy tails lowered as she slumped onto her desk, but then she quickly sat upright. "No. I have to stay focused," she muttered to herself, only to droop again moments later. This cycle of determined focus and sleepy defeat repeated several times, making the minutes feel like hours. At long last, the bell for lunch and recess echoed through the classroom. Naruko nearly jumped out of her chair in surprise. As the other students started filing out, she raised her hand and called out, "Excuse me, Sensei? What's going on now? Iruka glanced down at her and replied, "This is recess, Naruko. I explained this earlier after the Hokage left." Naruko rubbed the back of her head sheepishly. "I tried to pay attention, but the lesson got a little boring." Iruka's expression turned serious. "If you're truly interested in becoming a shinobi, then you'll need to stay focused during class. Since you're new here, I'll go over it again. Mornings are for lectures and instruction. After the break, we have afternoon sessions where we get to do the cool ninja activities." Naruko interrupted excitedly. Iruka raised a brow. "Please don't interrupt. As I was saying, in the afternoons we practice essential skills like throwing tools, observing targets, tracking, and basic ninjutsu, if the weather allows." "Oh, got it," Naruko responded more quietly, her enthusiasm slightly tempered by his tone. Iruka paused, realizing Naruko was waiting for him to finish. "You're free to go now, Naruko. Just stay within the academy grounds and return when the bell rings." Without another word, Naruko turned and dashed off, eager to join her classmates. Iruka watched her go with a thoughtful expression. Dash. Outside on the playground, Naruko was immediately surrounded by curious classmates. As she stepped outside, the other students rushed toward her, fascinated by her fox-like ears and multiple tails. Enjoying the attention for once, Naruko cheerfully answered their questions as best she could. When asked about her appearance, she simply replied, "I was born like this." Then a more personal question was raised. Kiba Inuzuka, known for his confident attitude and quick movements, stepped forward. "My whole family has animal traits like me. Is your family like that too?" Naruko's expression dimmed, her ears drooping slightly. "I don't really know. I've never met them." There was an awkward pause before, unexpectedly, Shikamaru lightly tapped Kiba on the head with a notebook. Most of the girls nearby were chatting excitedly, especially one blonde girl who whispered something about how cute Naruko would look with bows and flowers in her tails, an idea that made Naruko blush uncomfortably. Thankfully, Kiba quickly changed the subject. "All right, fox girl. I challenge you to a race around the field." "Why?" Naruko tilted her head. Kiba grinned. "Why not? Just for fun." Some of the other students enthusiastically supported the idea. Okay. Dash. The two lined up at the edge of the field. Ino Yamanaka, the blonde girl from earlier, stepped forward with her hand raised. "All right everyone, here are the rules, 3 laps around the academy. First one back wins. Ready. Set. Go." She brought her hand down sharply, and they were off. Naruko and Kiba sprinted side by side, the wind rushing past their faces. Kiba grinned confidently, surprised to see Naruko keeping up so easily. "No way. I'm usually the fastest," he thought. "Not bad, new girl. Let's see if you can match this." He pushed himself faster. Naruko felt a thrill as she ran. Though she had run through streets and rooftops before, racing alongside someone else was new and exhilarating. As they completed the first lap, cheers erupted from the onlookers. Some were stunned to see Naruko right next to Kiba, seemingly unfazed. Determined, Kiba called out to his small dog companion. "Akamaru, time to take things up a notch." With a burst of energy, Kiba dropped to all fours and increased his speed dramatically. "Whoa! That's amazing," Naruko thought. But she wasn't giving up. "He's fast. But I can be faster." Leaning forward, her arms trailing behind her and her tails balancing her stride, Naruko began to gain speed. As Kiba turned sharply at the final curve, he struggled slightly, skidding on the grass. Akamaru barked urgently. "What is it, Akamaru?" Kiba asked. "Bark." "What? She's right behind us already? But I'm running as fast as I can." Before he could react, Naruko zoomed past him, smoothly navigating the turn. Her tails adjusted behind her like a rudder, allowing her to maintain balance and speed. She flew across the finish line far ahead of Kiba. The playground fell silent in awe. Naruko had actually won, and she didn't even seem tired. Naruko turned back, beaming, as Kiba and Akamaru reached the line. "That was so much fun, Kiba. You're super fast. How did you run like that on all fours?" She extended her hand with a friendly smile. Kiba looked at it, then brushed it aside and walked away silently, clearly frustrated. Naruko watched him go, feeling unsure, especially when she noticed a light scratch on her hand from earlier. Before she could dwell on it, someone gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Turning, she saw a boy with a pineapple-shaped hairstyle, and next to him, another boy munching from a bag of chips. "Kiba's always been a bit intense," the first boy said. "Don't take it personally. I'm Shikamaru, and this food expert here is Kuji." Kuji waved without missing a bite. Naruko pointed curiously. "You're a bit," but before she could finish, Shikamaru covered her mouth gently and leaned in. "Careful. Let's avoid words that might upset him. Plus, you've got fluffy ears and tails, so maybe ease up on the labels." Naruko nodded, and Shikamaru let go. Luckily, Kuji hadn't heard, too distracted by someone passing with a snack. "So," Shikamaru asked, "what's your story, Naruko? Those features of yours, are they unique to your clan?" "Yeah, I guess so. I'm an orphan." "Oh. Sorry to hear that. When's your birthday?" "October 10th. Why?" "No reason. Just like comparing with mine, September 22nd. After a quiet moment, Shikamaru pointed to a nearby bench. "If you ever want to watch clouds or play shogi, feel free to join us." "Cloud watching?" Naruko asked, tilting her head. "Yeah. It's a relaxing way to pass time." Naruko smiled. "All right, I'll give it a try." Shikamaru smirked quietly to himself. "I'll give her 10 minutes before she's bored out of her mind." 5 minutes later. Naruko was practically on the verge of tugging her hair in frustration. Her fox-like ears twitched uncontrollably, and her 9 fluffy tails flicked in irritation. She had clenched her teeth so tightly that she thought her jaw might lock. Despite her best efforts to quietly observe the clouds, as Shikamaru suggested, she couldn't understand what was so fascinating about them. To make matters worse, Kuji's continuous snacking created an unbearable crunching rhythm that made her ears ache. For someone who was naturally energetic and constantly in motion, sitting still like this felt like pure torment. Naruko finally stood up, stretched her arms, and let out a yawn. "All right, I think I've reached my limit. I'll catch you all later." She gave a cheerful wave and dashed off in a blur of orange. Meanwhile, Shikamaru continued to observe in thoughtful silence. The remainder of the day proceeded smoothly. Although Kiba kept casting critical glances in Naruko's direction, he didn't speak to her. That afternoon, classes were held outside. The instructors demonstrated 2 essential ninjutsu techniques required for graduation: Bunshin no Jutsu, clone technique, and Henge no Jutsu, transformation technique. Naruko's eyes sparkled with excitement, and she silently vowed that she would master them. As the final bell rang, students rushed from the academy to reunite with their parents. Many excitedly shared stories about Naruko, describing the new classmate with fox ears and 9 tails. However, as was sadly predictable, some parents cautioned their children to keep their distance. The next day, Naruko returned to class, determined to focus. She listened carefully through the morning lectures and seemed to stay more engaged. When recess arrived, she quickly ran to the group of children who had been friendly to her the day before. "Hey, what's up?" she asked with a bright smile. But instead of cheerful greetings, they looked at her as if she'd grown a second head. Is something wrong?" she asked, her voice dipping. Without a word, the group stood and walked away quickly. Naruko's sensitive ears picked up hushed remarks. "My mom says she's dangerous, and Dad told me not to talk to her." Her smile faded, her tails drooping behind her. It was happening again, the same cycle she'd known too many times before. Naruko's spirits didn't lift during the afternoon session either. About 5 minutes into class, a loud yelp echoed as Naruko suddenly clutched one of her tails in pain. She turned around sharply and found herself looking straight into Kiba's mischievous grin. "Hey! What was that for?" Kiba leaned back casually. "What are you talking about? I was just sitting here, minding my business. You just jumped up like lightning. You stepped on my tail." "Oh yeah? You've got 9 of them. Could have been anyone around you." Naruko's eyes narrowed. "I know it was you." Before she could press the issue further, the teacher's voice rang out. "Naruko Uzumaki. Take your seat and pay attention." Naruko turned back, fingers still pointing at Kiba, but the look on her teacher's face told her there would be no arguing. Her expression was firm and unyielding. With a deep breath and slumped shoulders, Naruko returned to her seat. Kiba smirked in silence. That afternoon's lesson introduced the concept of hand seals, a vital component for channeling chakra in order to use ninjutsu. Their instructor, a calm and confident sensory ninja named Mitsuko Kawada, demonstrated a water-based technique that caused the liquid in her glass to rise and swirl through the air. The class watched in amazement. Each student was given a chakra-infused paper with a seal circle in the middle. They were to focus their chakra into it using a specific hand seal, just to get used to the flow. Naruko could hardly contain her excitement. She quickly tried forming the seal, but before she could continue, Kawada walked over and gently corrected her hand positioning. "There you go," she said kindly. "That's the correct seal." Naruko nodded, grateful, and focused. But nothing happened. She tried again. Still no result. Feeling increasingly frustrated, she looked around. Many of her classmates were already succeeding. Determined, she pushed more chakra into the paper, too much. Boom! A small burst of chakra sent Naruko tumbling backward, her chair toppling with her. Dazed, she looked up to see her instructor standing over her, still composed. "Class," Mitsuko said calmly, "this is why control is important. Too much chakra will overload the medium." To Naruko, she added, "Miss Uzumaki, please be more mindful next time." Most of the class giggled, and Naruko's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Weeks passed like this. Naruko tried hard, really hard, but continued to struggle. She put everything into her ninjutsu and taijutsu training, yet her efforts were often met with criticism. Even when she thought she had followed the instructions precisely, the teachers would still correct her, and she never seemed to receive the same encouragement the others did. In weapon training, her kunai rarely hit the target properly. Sometimes they missed completely, or bounced off at awkward angles. Her classmates would laugh, and instructors would often use her as an example of what not to do. Kiba, still sore from their earlier race, delighted in calling her names like the last one. Sadly, the nickname caught on. But Naruko refused to let it crush her spirit. She smiled, laughed it off, and tried again the next day, even if her heart quietly ached with loneliness. Months later. Naruko sat alone atop a tall telephone pole, her tails hanging down as she watched the setting sun over the academy training grounds. She sighed quietly, feeling the breeze pass through her golden hair and brush over her ears. "Why does everyone treat me this way?" she whispered to herself. That same painful question lingered in her heart. Why was she always the one left out? She wiped her eyes with her sleeve and stood. A rhythmic sound in the distance caught her attention. Her ears twitched. Curious, she leapt from the pole with effortless grace, sliding down using her claws for balance. She followed the sound to the dojo. Inside, a boy about a year older than her was energetically training with a practice dummy. He wore a traditional martial arts uniform, and his thick black eyebrows and long braided ponytail gave him a distinct appearance. He threw punch after punch with powerful determination, every movement driven by focus and resolve. Naruko watched in admiration. Eventually, the boy stopped and turned, startled to see her. "Hello," he greeted warmly. "I am Rock Lee. How do you do?" He bowed politely. Naruko blinked. No one had ever greeted her that nicely before. Especially not someone who didn't seem to care about her appearance. "I'm Naruko. What are you doing here so late?" "I am training," he said proudly. "Though I cannot use ninjutsu or genjutsu, I have chosen to master taijutsu through hard work and perseverance." Naruko tilted her head. "Really? You can't use any ninjutsu?" Lee's expression softened. "No. And because of that, many people call me strange or say I'll never become a true ninja." Naruko felt a sense of understanding. "Yeah. I've heard things like that too. People think I'm weird because of my tails and ears. I haven't been doing great in class either." Lee's eyes lit up. "So we both have our challenges, but that just means we'll work even harder to achieve our dreams." Naruko smiled for the first time that day. "Hey, I know a great spot to practice. Want to come check it out?" Lee beamed. "I would be honored." For the first time in a long while, Naruko felt something warm inside, hope. Maybe, just maybe, she had found a real friend. Naruko and Lee walked through the peaceful streets of Konoha. Though some passers-by cast uncertain glances at the young girl with golden hair and fox-like features, most were simply surprised to see her accompanied by someone like Lee, a child generally regarded as more traditional. A few villagers exchanged concerned whispers, unsure how to interpret the sight of their classmate walking alongside someone they didn't fully understand. As they continued along the path, a subtle tension passed over them, as if a protective gaze had settled nearby. Looking upward, they noticed an Onbu operative perched discreetly above, dog-masked and watchful, clearly keeping an eye on the situation. "Naruko-san," Lee said carefully, "please forgive me if this seems impolite, but I have observed that people often look at you with unease. May I ask why that is?" Naruko frowned slightly. She had considered taking the rooftops to avoid such reactions, but she wasn't sure if Lee could keep up, and she didn't want to discourage what might become a cherished friendship. So instead, she just shrugged with a casual smile. "Beats me," she replied, masking her discomfort. Eventually, they reached an old, unused building that Naruko had discovered during her explorations of the village. Lee looked around, puzzled. "Naruko-san, forgive my curiosity, but how is this supposed to help with training?" Naruko grinned playfully. "Like this." Before Lee could respond, Naruko was already scaling the walls, agile as ever. She leapt from beam to beam, flipping and twisting with remarkable grace, navigating the rafters as if she'd lived there. When she finally dropped to the floor, landing lightly in front of a wide-eyed Lee, her face beamed with excitement. Lee was speechless for a moment. Then, bursting with enthusiasm, he exclaimed, "Naruko-san, that was incredible. Your agility is amazing. How did you get so skilled?" Naruko smiled brightly. "Lots of practice. It's fun too, climbing and moving like that feels like flying." Lee's eyes shone with admiration. "I would be honored if we trained together. The two of us, people others may underestimate, will show everyone that we can be just as capable as any shinobi." He extended his hand with a determined smile. Naruko took it without hesitation, careful not to scratch him with her claws. "You got it. That's a promise, and I never go back on my word." Weeks passed. Naruko and Lee made it a habit to meet after class at their hideout. Naruko helped Lee with agility and endurance, while Lee became her sparring partner in taijutsu. One afternoon after class, they gathered at a makeshift dojo space for their first friendly match. Though both ended up slightly scuffed and tired by the end, they were smiling. There was no malice in their strikes, only mutual growth. Lee was especially grateful to have a partner who didn't view his challenges as limitations. They soon discovered that they were evenly matched in different ways. Lee had a strong foundation in the academy's teachings. Though often underestimated, he had learned the official techniques well and practiced them rigorously. He understood how to deliver effective strikes and recover quickly. Naruko, however, had mostly trained on her own. Her style leaned more toward what one might call urban ninja, developed through practical experience rather than formal instruction. She was extraordinarily fast, had a high tolerance for discomfort, and displayed remarkable strength due to her constant exploration of Konoha's rooftops and alleyways. However, she sometimes gave away her movements without realizing it, lacking the refined polish of formal taijutsu. One day, as they warmed up before sparring, Naruko demonstrated a series of academy techniques. Lee watched in confusion, his eyebrows rising with concern. "Naruko-san, I hope this doesn't offend you, but your form seems a little off." "Huh?" Naruko tilted her head. "What do you mean?" "That's what they taught me." Lee blinked. "Who taught you?" "Let me think. Oh, it was Mizuki-sensei. He was one of my instructors." Lee looked thoughtful. "That's strange. Some of those movements could leave you open in a real match. I wonder why anyone would teach you that." Naruko's face fell slightly, though she didn't speak. Deep down, a quiet realization was beginning to form, but she kept it to herself. Lee, noticing nothing, clapped his hands together. "Well then. Let me help you improve your taijutsu. I can teach you the correct forms." "Really?" Naruko asked, eyes lighting up. "Of course. That's what friends are for." Naruko's heart lifted. For the first time, she truly felt like she belonged. She wiped her eyes discreetly and took a stance. "Let's get started." Lee was true to his word. Whenever they sparred, he would kindly correct Naruko's posture or movement. Though the bad habits took time to unlearn, Lee remained encouraging and never showed frustration. Gradually, Naruko's confidence grew, and the loneliness she once felt began to fade. Lee, in turn, benefited greatly from Naruko's agility training. Though he lacked her natural balance and claws, he kept trying, even when it meant a few tumbles along the way. Naruko learned to adapt their exercises to his needs, showing patience and creativity. One day, they decided to test their jumping skills. They stood atop a tall rooftop, looking out at a wide gap. "Naruko-san. Are you sure about this?" Lee asked, nervously peering over the edge. "Totally. Watch me." Naruko dashed forward and leapt across the 20-foot gap with ease. "Now it's your turn." Lee took a deep breath, then sprinted toward the edge. "I'm ready," he shouted, and jumped. But he didn't quite make it. Fortunately, Naruko had anticipated this and launched herself forward, catching him mid-air. Their combined momentum carried them into a conveniently placed pile of soft refuse bags. As they emerged from the heap, brushing bits of paper and banana peels from their clothes, Naruko smiled sheepishly. Next time, maybe we try a shorter distance first. I agree, Naruko-san, Lee said with a chuckle. Despite the mess, both of them laughed, and that laughter echoed across the rooftops of Konoha, bright and free, as two young dreamers trained together, bound by determination, trust, and the beginning of a lifelong friendship. Despite their after-class training sessions going remarkably well, one of Naruko's lingering concerns was the possibility that other students, or even adults, might discourage Lee from spending time with her. And indeed, her fears proved to be valid. A few classmates had begun questioning Lee about his friendship with Naruko, and she was quite certain that some teachers had subtly hinted at the same. Yet Lee remained steadfast, undeterred by others' opinions, and stood by Naruko with unwavering loyalty. However, Naruko's worry reached a new height several days later. One afternoon during her lunchtime break, Naruko was looking around the academy grounds for Lee. Turning a corner, she spotted her enthusiastic, thick-browed friend speaking with Kiba. Instantly, Naruko panicked. She quickly ducked behind the corner wall, ears alert and straining to pick up every word. She silently wished, again and again, that Kiba would either walk away or that Lee wouldn't take anything he said to heart. "Hey Lee," Kiba called out, his voice carrying an unmistakably curious tone. When Lee turned toward him, Kiba continued. "I heard you've been hanging out with Naruko?" Naruko clenched her fists. The tension of what could come next made her stomach twist. If Kiba tried anything disrespectful toward Lee, she was ready to intervene immediately, no matter what. Lee, in his usual vibrant way, smiled brightly and said, "Yes. Naruko-san is a wonderful person to spend time with. We train together to improve our taijutsu and support each other's goals to become remarkable shinobi." Naruko facepalmed quietly from her hiding spot. Lee's honesty was heartwarming, but perhaps too straightforward sometimes. Kiba and Akamaru, who sat perched atop his head, both chuckled. "Seriously? Why waste your time? That fox girl couldn't possibly." Thud. Before he could finish, Kiba suddenly found himself sitting flat on the ground, hands covering his face. Akamaru had been knocked from his head and was now barking defensively, fur standing on end. Lee stood firm in front of him, his usually gentle expression replaced with one of firm resolve. With an uncharacteristically intense tone, Lee stated, "You will not refer to Naruko-san with such disrespect again." Kiba scrambled to his feet, clutching his nose, clearly upset. A small crowd of students had already gathered, curious about the commotion. Akamaru growled alongside him. Without hesitation, Kiba lunged at Lee, fists clenched. But before he could make contact, a flash of orange zipped through the crowd. Naruko leapt in, landing swiftly and driving an elbow into Kiba's stomach, halting his charge and knocking the air out of him. Almost without thinking, one of Naruko's tails lashed out, gently brushing Akamaru aside to stop the puppy's leap. Naruko now stood beside Lee, protective energy radiating from her as her tail shimmered behind her. She spoke with steady confidence, "I'd think carefully before trying that again." Kiba groaned, catching his breath as he watched Akamaru limp over to him. Seeing his companion unsettled seemed to ignite something in him. His expression grew intense as he prepared to move forward once more. Until he felt a firm tug on the hood of his jacket. He turned sharply, ready to argue, only to find Iruka-sensei holding him with one hand and gripping his wrist with the other. "Explain." "Now," Iruka said sternly, his usual calm replaced with a commanding presence. The ring of students quickly dispersed at the sight of the academy instructor. "They just attacked me." Kiba protested loudly, gesturing toward Naruko and Lee. "They even hurt Akamaru." Iruka's gaze moved to Naruko. She could tell he was trying to make sense of the situation. Her instinct told her that arguing would not help. So, she said nothing and stood still. Lee, however, stepped forward confidently. "That's not accurate. Kiba was the one who insulted Naruko-san. I was the first to act, and Naruko came to support me." Iruka looked at Lee carefully. "And why did you feel the need to strike him?" Lee bowed respectfully. "Iruka-sensei, I lost my temper. I apologize for reacting physically. I allowed my emotions to guide my actions when I should have used words. I will accept any consequences with respect." Iruka paused, taking in Lee's honest response. Then he turned to Kiba. "Take Akamaru to the nurse's office and get yourself checked out as well. You've been warned about your behavior before. Be more mindful." Kiba muttered quietly as he picked up Akamaru and walked away. Naruko's keen ears caught him referring to them as the weird duo, but she didn't react. Turning to Lee, Iruka said, "This is your first incident. I know you value honor, so let this be your reminder to always lead with calm strength. You're dismissed." Finally, Iruka faced Naruko. His expression was harder to read. She sensed that he was trying to understand something deeper, perhaps something more than just her actions. He stared into her eyes, likely expecting defiance or resentment. Instead, what he saw was quiet resolve. There was no anger, only the weight of having seen this kind of judgment before. Still, Naruko remained composed. Iruka noted Lee's continued presence at her side. It didn't escape him that Lee, one of the most hardworking and sincere students in the academy, had chosen to stand beside her even now. Still facing Naruko, Iruka finally spoke, his tone more reserved than harsh. "Naruko, engaging in a physical conflict outside of a training session is not acceptable. You should know this from class. Please be more cautious in the future. This is your warning." With that, he turned and left, clearly lost in thought. Naruko exhaled softly, relieved that the situation hadn't escalated further. She turned to Lee and said with a faint smile, "You didn't have to punch him, you know." Lee looked genuinely surprised. "How could I stand by when someone speaks unfairly about my friend? That's not the shinobi path I follow." Naruko chuckled lightly. "Thanks, Lee." She absent-mindedly scratched at one of her tails, feeling something odd, like a small tickle or movement in the fur. About a month later. The two friends were spending time in their secret training spot. Naruko was hanging from a beam overhead, stretching her limbs while Lee practiced his form through precise shadowboxing. Suddenly, Naruko's nose twitched. She had picked up a scent, distinct and slightly earthy, like insects. She focused her gaze on a dim corner of the room. "Lee," she said calmly, still hanging upside down. "I think someone's here." A figure emerged slightly from the shadows. It was the quiet, sunglasses-wearing boy from their class. He stood silently, expression unreadable. Naruko remained still, curious but alert. Lee, ever welcoming, raised a hand. "Hello. Welcome to our training hideout. Are you also here to refine your skills and grow stronger?" The boy gave no reply at first, appearing to measure the situation. Unknown to Naruko and Lee, this student, Shino, had witnessed the earlier conflict with Kiba. He'd overheard everything, including the disrespectful remarks. That word, freak, had struck a chord with him. He had heard it before. Directed at himself. So he had quietly observed the situation that day, even placing a beetle on Naruko and Kiba to follow up. It wasn't meant to invade privacy, only to better understand who they truly were, beyond gossip and assumptions. Kiba, with his aggressive attitude, had left a poor impression. Naruko, on the other hand. The boy finally spoke. "I am Shino. Shino Aburame." Weeks later. Naruko noticed a shift in the atmosphere around the village. People who once scowled or whispered rudely in her direction were now too preoccupied with discussing a recent event, the mysterious incident involving the Uchiha clan. Whispers filled the air, and even the Hyuga seemed oddly composed, though Naruko thought she spotted one or two with unusually satisfied expressions. Wanting to avoid unwanted attention, Naruko kept to rooftops and alleyways, steering clear of the main streets. She figured it was best not to be around too much until the gossip settled. For now, she avoided being seen with her friends like Lee or Shino in public. They still met in their usual hideout, but only when necessary. Later that week, while walking along a quiet riverbank, gently kicking a pebble along the path, Naruko noticed someone sitting alone on a wooden dock. It was a boy, around her age, staring silently at the flowing water. Flashback. "Class," the instructor had announced, "a tragic incident has occurred. The Uchiha clan has suffered a great loss. The only known survivor is your classmate, Uchiha Sasuke. If you are friends with Sasuke, please offer him kindness and support during this difficult time." Several students, especially some of the girls, exchanged quiet glances, already thinking of ways to comfort him. End flashback. Naruko paused. She recognized him now, it was Sasuke. She hesitated. On one hand, she didn't want to draw attention to herself. People might say the wrong thing, and she didn't want to be blamed for anything. On the other hand, even though Sasuke had always seemed admired and respected, Naruko knew loneliness when she saw it. He must be feeling so alone, she thought. Making a decision, Naruko stepped lightly down the bank and onto the dock, making sure her footsteps weren't too quiet so she wouldn't startle him. As she approached, she gently greeted, "Hey." Sasuke, having noticed someone nearby, turned slowly. His eyes widened when he recognized her. The expression in his eyes made Naruko pause. There was a pain there that mirrored her own. Those eyes. Just like mine. Full of hurt and isolation. He's just like me. The silence stretched, until Sasuke finally spoke, his voice guarded. What do you want, Fox Girl? Naruko blinked at the nickname, but didn't let it bother her. Nothing really. I just saw you sitting here and thought I'd check on you. Wanted to see if you were okay. I don't need anyone's help or sympathy, Sasuke said, turning away. I'm an Uchiha. I can handle myself. Just like my. His voice trailed off. Naruko remained there for a moment, unsure what else to say. Eventually, she turned and walked away, her 9-fox tail swaying gently in the breeze. She didn't notice the quiet tear that slipped down Sasuke's cheek. As the years passed, Naruko continued to work hard in her classes. She gave her best effort, though some of the instructors said she still struggled with certain techniques. But one thing she had discovered was a unique talent for light-hearted pranks that often got even the most serious classmates to laugh. Naruko's appearance changed over time, too. She stood a little taller now, her golden hair reaching farther down her back. Her 9 tails had grown longer as well, each of them agile and expressive. Thanks to regular training with Lee, she had developed a strong and lean build. Her energy and optimism remained as bright as ever. This year, she decided to express her individuality as a shinobi. Early one morning, she woke up, took out a bright orange jumpsuit she'd bought, and with careful cuts, tailored it to accommodate her tails. She even added a pair of goggles to complete the look. Feeling proud, she stepped in front of the mirror and gave herself a confident nod. Yes. This year, they'll have to take me seriously. With a spring in her step, Naruko chose not to sneak across rooftops like she normally did. Instead, she walked straight through the village toward the academy, smiling brightly. The reactions were interesting. Some villagers blinked in surprise. Others did double takes. A few even dropped their chopsticks or spat out their tea in disbelief. At least they weren't throwing anything or glaring. Naruko counted that as progress. When she arrived at the academy, her classmates stared at her new outfit, and many burst out laughing. Even some of the instructors looked uncertain. But Naruko stood tall, proud of her look. Lee, as always, applauded her with genuine enthusiasm. Even Shino raised an eyebrow, a rare and momentous reaction. After classes ended, Naruko scaled the Hokage Tower to show the 3rd Hokage her new look. As always, she entered through the window with a grin. Sarutobi was in conversation with Onbu Dog when she arrived. He paused mid-sentence, taken aback by Naruko's bright ensemble. He opened his mouth, likely ready to ask if she'd met a certain wandering eccentric recently, but stopped when he saw the pride on her face. Well, Naruko. It's certainly unique. A bold start to your career. Where did you find it? I bought it at the market. Naruko beamed. I even bought extras so I'll always have a clean one ready. Then, with a cheerful wave, she was gone, right back out the window. Dog stared after her. Did she say multiple copies? Sarutobi sighed. Onbu Dog, I have a new task for you. Find that vendor. Inform them that any more shipments of that jumpsuit should be discontinued. Immediately. Outside the classroom, Naruko's studies were improving, especially thanks to her friends. Hanging around someone as thoughtful and analytical as Shino helped a lot. Shino often borrowed books from the library for her, her favorite being the stories of the 4th Hokage, and he never questioned her explanation as to why she wasn't allowed in herself. Despite Shino's quiet nature, Naruko set herself a playful goal, to make him laugh. Just once. She tried everything, from silly faces to challenging Lee to wild dance battles. Nothing worked. Not even Lee's incredible enthusiasm got so much as a chuckle from Shino. One time, Naruko mischievously tried to swipe Shino's sunglasses, only to find out that this was a serious offense in the Aburame clan. Shino responded by filling her hair, clothes, and tails with beetles. Naruko spent the entire day itching, laughing it off, after it was over, and promising never to try it again. Still, she admired both of her friends deeply. Lee's optimism and Shino's steady presence gave her a sense of belonging. No matter how the world saw her, Naruko knew this, she would become someone who protected her village, earned respect through her actions, and brought smiles wherever she went. Eventually, Lee passed his exam, thanks to his incredible taijutsu skills. He gratefully thanked his friends for their support and encouragement, knowing that now he would be placed on a Jinan team and might not have as much time to spend with them anymore. Months later, Shino also successfully completed the exam and would return soon to be assigned to a team. Before he left, he offered Naruko a few calm words of advice, encouraging her not to give up and to approach her challenges with thoughtful determination. Taking this to heart, Naruko rededicated herself to training, determined to succeed. Still, it wasn't easy. Many of her classmates continued to look down on her. One of the greatest challenges was Sasuke Uchiha. Ever since she had seen him at the docks, Sasuke had grown more focused and was now excelling at the top of the class. He quickly gained admiration from others, something he rarely acknowledged. Before his family's tragic past, few noticed him, but now, he was practically idolized. The fan groups surrounding him made things even harder for Naruko. They often followed Sasuke, cheering loudly and offering endless attention. Meanwhile, Naruko's efforts in training were met with teasing. They would say she could never compare to their Sasuke-kun, making Naruko feel more isolated. Kiba also added to her difficulties. Without Lee or Shino around, he ramped up his teasing, constantly trying to provoke her. Naruko did her best to stay out of his way, although it puzzled her, she didn't know what she had done to earn such persistent rivalry. To her surprise, Iruka began to show a bit more warmth toward her. During classes, he'd offer helpful advice and even treat her to ramen now and then, which Naruko quietly appreciated. One day. Again. I didn't pass, Naruko whispered to herself as she sat alone on the swing outside the academy. Her tails gently brushed the ground as she swayed back and forth, a soft breeze ruffling her hair. I don't understand why I keep messing up. I try, but that transformation technique just doesn't work the way it should. She watched other students exit the building, their headbands gleaming in the sunlight. Their parents greeted them with hugs, proud smiles, and congratulations. Some were going out for meals, while others celebrated with friends. Lee and Shino were already with their own groups, so Naruko had no one to talk to. As she sat there, some parents glanced her way, whispering quietly. She didn't pass again? Maybe it's for the best. At least we can keep watch on her. Who would allow her to become a shinobi? Careful what you say. We're not supposed to talk about that. Naruko turned her head, pretending not to hear, but their words echoed in her heart. She eventually stood and began walking away slowly, her hands in her pockets and her expression downcast. From behind a nearby wall, Hinata Hyuga peeked around the corner, her eyes filled with concern. Oh, Naruko. She thought sadly. She wanted to comfort her, but just then, her name was called, and she turned to rejoin her family. Hey there, Naruko, a voice called out. Naruko looked up to see Mizuki-sensei, one of the academy instructors, leaning casually against a wall. Yes, Mizuki-sensei? I know you're feeling disappointed, he said, leaning in a little closer. But there's another way to pass the test. Naruko's eyes widened. Really? Mizuki nodded and whispered, inside the Hokage's tower, there's a scroll with special techniques. If you can get it and learn one, it'll count as passing. Naruko hesitated. Stealing didn't sit right with her, especially from the Hokage, but the chance to finally earn her headband and escape her stigma was incredibly tempting. All right, Mizuki-sensei. What do I have to do? With a sly grin, Mizuki pulled a small map from his vest and quietly began explaining. Later that night. Naruko silently approached the gates surrounding the Hokage tower. She remembered a helpful mantra she created to avoid being caught during her past misadventures: see, hear, sense. Carefully checking for signs of guards, she darted forward like a shadow, weaving between buildings. Mizuki-sensei said the vent is on the west side, she murmured. Suddenly, a guard strolled by, unknowingly just beneath her. Clinging to the wall 20 feet above, Naruko held her breath, claws and feet securing her in place. Once he passed, she crept across the wall, reaching the vent. Using her tails and claws, she slowly unscrewed it, but the vent cover slipped. With lightning reflexes, she caught it mid-air using 3 of her tails. Phew, she whispered, pulling it in behind her and crawling into the ductwork. Let's see. Left, right, left, she whispered at each turn. Finally, she peered down into a large archive room. Jackpot. She unscrewed the grate again and carefully dropped inside. The room was massive, filled with scrolls and books, the scent of aged parchment filling the air. Naruko looked around in wonder. So many powerful techniques. But she quickly reminded herself, focus. She read off a few scroll titles with wide-eyed curiosity. Fire techniques and cooking. The History of the Hidden Leaf. Medical Ninjutsu Weekly. A Beginner's Guide to Longevity by Orochimaru. Lady Tsunade's Medical Genius, a tabloid biography. Transparency Jutsu, Insight Before Commitment by Jiraiya. Then she saw it, the Forbidden Scroll. She carefully picked it up and turned toward the air vent, but it was too big to fit back through. Looking at the hallway instead, she realized she'd need to sneak out another way. Wrapping the scroll securely with her tails, she tiptoed to the door. Just as she reached a window and was about to escape, a familiar voice startled her. "Naruko, what do you think you're doing?" The color drained from her face. Slowly, she turned and saw the third Hokage, smiling gently. Thinking quickly, Naruko formed a hand sign. "Sorry, old man." A puff of smoke exploded, and standing there was a charming, winking version of herself in disguise. Sarutobi chuckled, momentarily dazed by the trick. Taking the opportunity, Naruko dashed away through the hall, over rooftops, and finally out toward the forest beyond the village. Despite herself, she grinned. "I did it. I really did it. I've come so far. This is it. My moment." Bounding over rooftops and trees with grace, she headed to the meeting spot Mizuki told her about. Meanwhile, Iruka raced through the trees. Konoha's outer surveillance had detected a presence crossing the wall, and some shopkeepers mentioned a fox-like shadow racing through the streets. It had to be Naruko. He didn't want to believe she had stolen the Forbidden Scroll, but the Hokage himself had confirmed it. Sarutobi had even asked Iruka to personally assist in the search, knowing how close he had grown to her over time. "She's not like everyone says," Iruka thought. "She works harder than anyone I know. I had it easier growing up, I knew my parents. I was loved. Naruko's always had to fight for acceptance, yet she never gave up." He frowned, his pace quickening. "I can't believe I ever judged her. She's always tried her best. If someone like her made a mistake this big, maybe she didn't do it alone." Realization struck. What if someone tricked her? With renewed determination, Iruka surged forward, determined to find Naruko before anything else went wrong. He found Naruko at the edge of a quiet clearing. The girl stood beside a partially unrolled Forbidden Scroll. "Hey, Iruka-sensei. I found the scroll. Does this mean I pass?" "Naruko. What have you done? Do you even understand the kind of trouble you're in? Wait, pass what?" Naruko's face turned puzzled. "Huh? What do you mean, sensei? Mizuki-sensei told me that if I took the scroll, I'd pass the test and become a Genin." Iruka's mind raced, putting the pieces together, then his expression shifted to alarm. "Naruko, look out," he shouted, lunging forward and knocking her to the ground just as a giant shuriken sliced through the air where she had stood. It curved midair and flew back into Mizuki's waiting hand. "Well, it looks like the girl with the secret finally did something useful," Mizuki said mockingly. "Congrats, Naruko, you passed the test. Of being the most gullible person in the village." Iruka quickly placed himself between Mizuki and Naruko, determined to protect her. You were the one who tricked her?" Mizuki grinned. "Oh yes. It was a perfect plan. First, I fed her the wrong answers over the past few months to make sure she failed every test. And don't act so surprised, Iruka. I wasn't the only one. A lot of people didn't believe in her at all." Naruko's eyes widened, listening in silence. "Then," Mizuki continued, holding up a finger for each point, "I took advantage of her desperation to finally succeed, and used her to steal the scroll. No one would have believed her. If caught, she'd be punished, and the Hokage wouldn't be able to stop it." Far away, the third Hokage, observing through a scrying orb, clenched his fist. You lied to me?" Naruko asked softly, her voice trembling. "Of course I did," Mizuki said harshly. "And not just me. The entire village has been hiding the truth from you since the day you were born. There's a law about what happened during the nine-tailed fox incident." "You had no right," Iruka shouted, lunging at Mizuki. Mizuki blocked the strike and struck back, causing Iruka to stumble. He quickly retaliated by throwing a shuriken, which Iruka narrowly avoided, only to be struck in the leg by another one hidden behind it. Mizuki turned his attention to Naruko again. "You ever wonder why people look at you the way they do? It's because you carry the spirit of the nine-tailed fox within you. The eyes, the tails, the ears, it's all connected to that day. That power hurt so many people. Including Iruka's family." Iruka tried to rise, injured but determined. "Naruko, that's not who you are. Listen to me. I lost my family in that attack, but I've never blamed you. You've always tried your hardest, no matter how others treated you. The fox's energy was sealed inside you to protect the village. But you are not the fox. You're a shinobi with a strong heart. Naruko stared at the ground, tears falling from her cheeks. All the confusion, all the pain, suddenly, it felt like too much. She fell to her knees, her hands pressed into the earth. Mizuki pulled out another scroll and summoned a Fuma Shuriken, raising it high. It's time to end this story. No, Iruka cried out. Naruko looked up and saw that Iruka had shielded her, taking the hit instead. He collapsed beside her, breathing heavily but still conscious. Naruko looked at him in disbelief. Why? Why would you do that? Because I believe in you, Iruka whispered. Mizuki walked toward them, ready to strike again, but stopped suddenly, his arm frozen mid-swing. Naruko had caught it with surprising strength. Her eyes shimmered with fiery determination. If you try to hurt Iruka-sensei again, I won't let you. Mizuki glared. You think you can stop me? I'm a jounin. You're just a beginner. He swung his free arm in a punch, but Naruko reacted instinctively. She dodged, then bit into the arm, hard. Mizuki yelped in pain and jumped back, clutching his wounded limb. What? What are you? He gasped. Naruko didn't answer. She wiped her mouth, stood up, and stared directly at him. For just a moment, her eyes flashed red. Then she clasped her hands together and formed a sign. In a burst of energy, dozens, no, hundreds, of shadow clones appeared around Mizuki, each one identical to Naruko with fox ears, tails, and that intense stare. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Naruko said calmly. A little technique I picked up from the scroll. You know, if I were what you think I am, it probably wasn't smart to make me angry. Mizuki looked around, panic rising. The clones advanced slowly, surrounding him. Moments later, Mizuki lay defeated on the ground, bruised and exhausted, barely conscious. Naruko stood over him, breathing hard. Her clones vanished in a puff of smoke. Behind her, Iruka had pulled himself up and was leaning against a nearby rock. Sensei. Naruko ran to him. You need help. I'll go get someone. She turned to go, but Iruka gently grabbed one of her tails to stop her. It's okay, Naruko. I saw what happened. Those were real shadow clones. You mastered that technique in one night? Naruko nodded, still catching her breath. Close your eyes, Iruka said. She obeyed. She felt her goggles being lifted from her head, and something else being wrapped around her forehead in their place. Open them. Naruko opened her eyes to see that Iruka had placed his own forehead protector on her. Congratulations, Naruko. You are officially a Genin of the Hidden Leaf Village. Naruko stood frozen for a second, then suddenly threw her arms around Iruka in a powerful hug. Ah. Naruko, easy. I'm still recovering. She giggled through her tears. For the first time, she truly felt like she belonged. Dear YouTube family. That's all for now, thank you for being part of the journey. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated. Much love, and until next time, stay awesome. Warm regards. 6 Path Weeb.